right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. Hi, everyone. Alexis Brooks here from Higher Journeys. I am so glad that you decided to join us today. I'm particularly excited because every time I have Cynthia Sue Larson on the show, I can guarantee you it's going to be a treat. And today's show is no exception. If you know the work of Cynthia Sue Larson, she's often referred to as the quantum optimist, the reality shifter herself. And more recently, I should say in more recent years, she has become synonymous with the phenomenon known as Mandela Effects. What are they? Where are they coming from? Are they more than false memory? Well, I think you can probably surmise with the direction that Cynthia goes in, it's much more than false memory. This is what we're talking about today. New Mandela effects that are cropping up, and believe me, they're cropping up all over the place, including with this phenomenon, this newer phenomenon known around the world now as the silver monoliths. Is there a Mandela effect aspect to that? So we'll be talking about this and so much more. But it never gets old for me, Mandela effects, and neither does my guest, Cynthia Sue Larson. I know you're going to enjoy the show, so stay tuned. Here we go. We're getting into high strangeness here on Higher Journeys. Well, journeyers, welcome to Higher Journeys. So glad you joined us today because we are back with my dear friend, my sister, and somebody that I've known, Cynthia Sue Larson. I've been thinking we're going on over 20 years, girl, that we've
Yes.
known each other, right?
Yeah, I'm very blessed to have known you so long. You're such a,
Ditto.
yeah.
Ditto. I am honored to know you because you are a pioneer in so many. And I'm not just tooting your horn. I am tooting your horn. Actually, I'm going to toot your horn because you deserve to have your horn toot. The reality shifter woman, the quantum optimist, and now the Mandela effect. What? I, I don't like to use the word guru, but you are quickly becoming the established expert on this anomaly that few people can parse. And so I am honored to know someone that is so close, not only to the anomaly, but the science of it. And you do contend that there is a science to all these things that you're talking about, which is what makes, not only does it bring credibility to these otherwise enigmatic issues, but a lot of people relate to, and I think they feel more comfortable with the more left brain trying to parse what's going on. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for all of that. Today, we're going to be talking about the Mandela Effect. What else, journeyers, would we be talking about with Cynthia? I think the last 2 or 3 shows that we've done have been centered in and around Mandela Effects because it seems like there's always sort of changing and expanding, and you're learning more about the dynamic that may be causing them. And that's kind of what I want to get into today. So let's do it. First, let me say welcome. Welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you. Yay. So glad to be with you today. Glad that we've got the internet. Thank goodness for that. What a
We've got
difference
the
this makes.
internet.
Yeah.
We've got the sunshine today where we are here in the Boston area. We've got spring around the corner. Life is just rosy. Oh dear, where shall we start? First of all, I want to say I don't know that we've ever established this, at least on this show, but you have been studying what would otherwise be known as Mandela effects since the 90s. I mean, this really started with your work with the book Reality Shifts and, of course, your website, realityshifters.com. What was the inclination for you to look? I feel like I'm going back in time here, but maybe we need to level set here. What was your inclination to even want to get into
Mhm.
this area of research, Cynthia?
Well, it took a lot of courage to step forward with that assertion that things are shifting, that there's this mind matter interaction so powerful that you can literally witness changes in physical reality, which the mainstream story would say is not supposed to happen. You know, we're not supposed to be able to think something and then notice that someone has died, is now alive again. And maybe it's tied to our thoughts, maybe it's not. But in the case of the book Reality Shifts, I reported the actor Larry Hagman in my reality had died in the 1980s. And he'd been sick, he'd had some kind of internal organ issues, been hospitalized, and then passed away. And I know he's dead now. This is 2021, but we are time traveling. We're going back to the 1980s. And that was the first celebrity that I know of who was written about having died and then being alive again, is in my book, Reality Shifts, that first came out in its first edition in the late 1990s. And I found out I wasn't the only one, but it took a while because if you think back to the 1980s, the 1990s, of course there was no internet. So there was no conversation possible across the world like we can now have about Nelson Mandela, which is how the Mandela Effect got its name. And I'm actually really glad it is Nelson Mandela. I'm glad that it's not Larry Hagman. No offense to Larry Hagman, he's a wonderful actor. But I mean, if you're going to pick somebody, my gosh, we're so lucky to have Nelson Mandela.
It has a ring
And
to it. The Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect. Wow.
yeah, because he was about freedom. When you look at Nelson Mandela's life, I don't think it's an accident because people think, oh, that's so random. And why name this phenomenon where things are changing and everybody's having a different so called collective false memories? I'd like to put it out there. Maybe these are not false memories. Maybe the memories are true. Maybe we remember correctly that Nelson Mandela did die when he was imprisoned on Robben's Island, when he was still in jail, because I remember that. And that along with Larry Hagman, others, many others. So it's not just one celebrity that passes away and then we think, oh, I must be confused. Why would so many people have the same confusion? Is the question that the Mandela Effect asks us, invites us to take a look at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The question comes to mind as I've sat in silence and pondered this dynamic because I think it's still there's such a measure of mystery associated with what we're really dealing with. One of the questions, Cynthia, that's come to mind for me is what is, if something is shifting, if something is changing, is it reality itself or our brains? And when I say that, I don't mean, I'm not implying that if it's our brains, it's a false memory, but literally, I'm thinking more of a holographic concept of the malleability. That's one of the features of a hologram, that it's plastic and malleable. Could our brains be as well? And if the brain is what's generating the data that we're interpreting as reality, could it be changing just as
Yes.
much as perhaps timelines themselves? What do you think?
When we look at this collective false memory, this Mandela effect, one of the frequent explanations, people jump to a conclusion because we want an answer. So often we jump to an answer before we really have enough proof. We don't have enough proof yet, in my opinion, to say it definitely is caused by one thing or another. But one thing to take a look at, as you're referring right now, is to the mind itself. And of course, that's where the skeptics and the cynics are going immediately, saying, well, you guys are forgetful, or worse yet, you're crazy, or you're confabulating, or brains fail, et cetera, et cetera. So, what I do on my podcast, Living the Quantum Dream, is I've interviewed brain experts. I've talked to Jerome Busemeyer. He's a professor that wrote a book about quantum cognition and decision making. And I've talked, I don't know what his stand is on the Mandela effect specifically. My point was, if he can prove, as he does in his book and in his research, that the brain operates in a quantum fashion, then he's showing very beautifully and elegantly that our brains do not think black and white, in this very Boolean fashion, but instead they are processing it with relationships. The way we're connected is everything. And that's what quantum entanglement is all about.
Right.
And that's what he gets into. So there's that aspect. And then you brought up, I love it, the Bohmian holographic concept. Yes. And Carl
Mhm.
Pribram was a neurologist, and both of these guys were mentioned in an excellent book by physicist Michael Talbot, The Holographic Universe. Brilliant book. And it gets into this holographic idea. And I touch on that in my book, Reality Shifts, because I loved it so much, because I was looking around like, where's the explanation for
Mhm.
what's going on? That was one of the best go-tos, is that interpretation of reality. We're all connected, that there's this implicit order behind everything. And it matches what the father of quantum physics himself said. Max Planck said, everything is consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental. You cannot get behind consciousness. And that's the ultimate Zen koan here, because as much as we would love to left brain analyze the heck out of this and get some definite, pin down some answers, get an experiment so we can prove for once and for all that Mandela effects either are real and physical reality, and maybe our brains too are changing, or are we just making this stuff up or what have you. But there's as yet no way to do that kind of an experiment that I know of, because you'd need the control, and you're testing consciousness itself. And another guest I had on my show was Donald Hoffman, who he's an expert on vision, and he wrote books on it. He's now back in the front front and center of this whole consciousness concept, because he's saying that our senses are very much like the screen on your desktop, on your laptop, on your cell phone. So when you put something in the trash or you swipe the screen, you're playing with an interface, and that's
Mhm.
how our five senses work. They are an interface to the actual reality, which is nothing like what we think it is. We think things are like I can pick up a pen or my coffee cup and I can hold it and so forth. But these are actually not so much real as they're nothing like what we think tell us. It's cold, it's so many millimeters high, and it weighs this much, and it has that temperature. But those are artificial constructs, really. They're almost arbitrary. They're typically consistent, but not always. And it's these inconsistencies that the Mandela effect is showing us
I
so really
agree with
beautifully.
you.
Yeah.
I'm imagining probably one of the more fundamental explanations of how matter and energy work. Really, all of it is energy, but what we think of as material, we tend to think of it as inanimate. We think of it as stagnant or not moving, like this the table I'm touching here. I don't see any atoms and molecules swirling around, but it's not that they're not. They're just moving at such a slow rate are within the visible spectrum that we operate within. We can't see that. And maybe what you're saying, Cynthia, is that when reality shifts occur, there's something that's triggering uh, their motion, or the rate of motion, to accelerate and then retreat back to ebb and flow. Does that make any sense? That
Oh gosh, yes, yes. Well, you know me, and I love to follow. Like, what are they doing with quantum physics now? Is my question to engineer something new. And what they're doing right now is they're taking quantum jumps, and they're looking at these quantum jumps where when a quantum particle, say an electron, is jumping from one level in the cell to another, then it releases so much energy that it looks like we'll be able to create some of our best batteries ever. And we may be on to a source of power eventually through quantum jumps, literally. And these are very tiny, but when you look at them collectively, they have the ability in a large scale system to provide us with a tremendous amount of potential power and stored energy, which is amazing. So that's why I like to look at when people say like you can't lump these things together. You can't just make assumptions that things like you're describing on the quantum tiny scale can possibly affect us on the big scale. Well, I love to look at the
you say they do,
technology.
though. You say
We
they do. I remember when
absolutely,
on the
yes,
macro. Absolutely.
absolutely. But see, you and I are saying that, and we're in the front, the cutting edge of this theorizing, and actually we're the front runners observing it, the phenomenon. You've written your book about it. You describe these kinds of phenomenon. The stuff that's paranormal, these phenomena can absolutely be looked at as something that can be expected to sometimes occur when you recognize that these interconnections that we see on a quantum level can and do play out on a macroscopic scale.
Here's the thing that will always intrigue me, and as we move forward, at least we feel we are in time linearly, it seems to be happening more. The question I have, Cynthia, is if there is a catalyst that causes these wild fluctuations to occur, where we will see a tree there one minute and not there the next, Mandela effects of all kinds. And by the way, journeyers, we're going to get into the monoliths and the Mandela effect principle applied to these strange monoliths that have been showing up. But what's happening right now, in your estimation, Cynthia, that are allowing for these things to be so much more frequent, so much more ubiquitous? I am hearing from countless individuals, as I know you are as well, who are experiencing these things on a more regular basis. The anomalies are, there's an uptick in the types of anomalies that are happening. What is happening right now? I want to talk about uh, the the uh, the color spectrum. I know you talked
Mhm.
about that in a wonderful talk. We're going to talk about IMEC.
Mhm.
We'll get into that conference, not conference, but a panel that you had where you talked about the color spectrum and uh, colors that are showing up. People are experiencing that they've never seen before. What is happening now? What is the impetus for all of this?
Okay, if we're talking about the impetus of all of creation being consciousness, that is the source of reality, then again, obviously consciousness is at cause for where these Mandela effects coming from as well. So collectively, we're now connected more than ever thanks to the internet, and we are capable of noticing, which we never would have noticed before, when people who are very intuitive feeling types, in other words, empaths, like you and I both are, and so many people who are noticing this phenomena are. And at the same time, as we've got the technology to share the information, and then third, we're getting these energetic fluctuations. The Schumann resonance has
Yeah,
just gone bananas in the last decade or so, and it just seems like it keeps ramping up and doing things that people are saying it's never done this before. So that's becoming the go-to comment about the Schumann resonance. But those of us who, I think everyone's sensitive to these things at some level. So it's the empaths, the intuitive feelers, who might be the first ones to be bold enough, like you and I were, to early on 20 years ago go public and say these things are happening. And now more and more people, thanks to those of us who have been the front runners, are being able to say, yes, reality shifts are occurring. That seems like it's one of the trending topics on TikTok right now for the
really.
20 something. Yes, it's like hundreds of millions of hits on shifting realities hashtag. And it's a huge trending topic. So it's not just the Mandela effect, it's everything related to this is bubbling up in consciousness in every age group. It's not just my
I agree.
generation, your generation. Yeah.
There's a phenomenon that I'm trying my best to recall, brain fog, something we were talking about off air that I'm getting a lot, so I'm not going to recall the name. But you mentioned TikTok and you mentioned sort of the millennials that are kind of into this whole dynamic of reality shifts. And there is an app that we actually talked about on The Proof is Out There. I didn't cover that story on the History Channel, plug for The Proof is Out There. But we did cover the story in the series. It's an app. Help me with this. Begins with an R. Ra
Right.
ra racket oh,
I think I know what you're talking about. I haven't tried it, but it's the one that helps you randomize
locate.
things.
You visualize something. Let's
Yes.
say you wanna find a lost dog, and the app will give you the coordinates, the latitude,
And
longitude, and the area where you can find it.
there's
Help us
something about the
journey your
time. Yeah, so it works with synchronicities and the energies of the fact that everything's connected and what you care about matters. It's a divination tool for our times. Helps you
do you feel there's
randomly.
something to it? Because
They're all divination systems. There's something too, because consciousness, so
consciousness.
you can buy an app, or you can just look at. My grandmother taught me to read tea leaves. You just look at the bottom of your cup. That's every bit as accurate. You don't need an iPhone or something and an app. That's nice, but you don't need it. It's a tool. They're all tools. They all work. And so this is why our ancestors were able to throw the bones and be able to get a reading out of that,
That's
or look
right.
at the tea leaves. These things work because of quantum physics. They always have worked. It's just the way things are. So of course now we've got an app because we love our technology, but we don't need to bow down to the god of scientism or anything, or the engineering, because it's still working with the same phenomenon. They're using a quantum tool set and a randomizing application, most certainly. I don't know the details, and I don't know I don't know the name of this app, but you've told me about it.
Help me journeyers. Okay, I'm gonna go off screen and look it up while you
Yeah.
talk, and I'm gonna look it up. Now, what would a app
Okay.
what would be the keyword? App to find a visualization app.
I,
Oh
I call it
dear.
I call it a synchronicity app. Because it's like that's what it's doing. It's synchronicity, and so it's helping you find things. You type in divination, randomizer, synchronicity, but
Begins with
all.
an R.
Yeah.
Oh, help me. Keep talking. I'm gonna find it
Okay.
here.
So what you're able to do, and some people actually, they'll just have fun with it. They'll kind of randomly try things. They'll, even if they're not looking for something lost, they'll type in, like, let's get a coordinate, let's go and see what happens. And they'll be on these kind of random journeys, totally journeyers, like higher journeys. And you get the higher journeys when you vibe up. So you want to ask my favorite question: how good can it get? No matter what seems to be happening, get yourself in that grateful, ideally reverent, high, very high vibe and zone, and then use the device. And oh my gosh, that's how to bring really fabulous good luck back into our lives, no matter
Absolutely.
what's happening. Yeah, and I think we all need that right now.
I think we do too. I can't find it, and I want to make sure I'm following the conversation. We'll find it. Journeyers, if you happen to know what I'm talking about, leave us a comment below because I think it is fascinating. And I do agree with you that, divination is such a broad term and it's so old, whether we're talking about the I Ching or I Ching, depending on how you pronounce it, to the Tarot, to something that's called, when you open a book, I call it book dowsing. When you,
Stickomancy.
I call it stichomancy, stickomancy. That you're absolutely right. I think stichomancy sounds better, but yes, that happened to me the other day. Want to hear a quick story? Journeyers, I
Yeah.
know you're going to love this. It has to do with the repeating numbers. Yes, I will continue to talk about it. The one for me lately, Cynthia, is 55. It's 55. It's everywhere. It's as many times that it can possibly show up to me, it will. Long story short, in the midst of this 55 onslaught that's been going on for probably a good month at this point, out of the blue, I decided to do a stickomancy to just for sometimes I'll just go into my library, pull a book and say, what do you need me to know today?
Right.
And so I did. I pulled the book, don't even recall the name of the, yes, I do recall. It was a book by Shakti Gawain, God bless her.
Mm.
And I opened the book, and before I even read the message, I looked at the bottom of the page. I said, and it was a tiny number. I said, please don't tell me it's page 55. Page 55.
Love it.
So you better believe I read that message intently. What is going on? Is this not all connected to what you're talking about, Cynthia? Let's go
Oh,
into that for a minute.
well, when we get messages, it depends on who you're connecting with. Levels of consciousness play a role. Remember, consciousness is the key. So if each of us have these, and your show, Higher Journeys, is suggesting there are higher levels of consciousness that we each have access to. So you can totally do that. And when you do that, then you can ask questions and get answers. And even if you think, I can't hear it, you can use a tool like just pick up a book, flip to a random page, and get an intuitive answer. What we're doing is we're turning off that left brain analytical side of reasoning that thinks it knows, but that's the goal setting side of our brains. We want to empower the right side of our brain, which is the part that tells the story, has the sense of our lives mattering, that we have a mission in life, that we have a purpose, that we're here for a reason. And this kind of a calling, the sense of excitement, adventure, all of that comes from the right brain. And so you can, when you learn any kind of a system to turn off that overly analytical part of your brain that wants to explain everything and know everything based on, now we've got the word, we've got it figured out. Not necessarily. So if you want to let that be the faithful servant, and you can set your goals once you have your mission in place. So first you want to get your mission. These are brilliant ways to do it. Just turn your brain off and chant, meditate, pray, open a book and get stickomancy, but always, always, always connect at the highest level. You can, if you're not religious, then ask, how good can it get? Guarantee that you're connecting at that highest ultimate good level, and you'll get much better results.
Happening a lot now, though. And this is why I keep going back to this. I think you've answered the question. Well, I think it's an open-ended question in terms of why now is there such an uptick in all of this activity? But you went there beautifully, so I'm not going to ask it again. But this is where my focus is rooted. Could it be that our own magnetic field is, I used to call it the veil, sort of euphemistically speaking, but is our magnetic field actually thinning? Are we finally being exposed to the underbelly of reality vis-a-vis these experiences, because something is just different now? Let's talk about the conversation that you had with your colleagues at IMAC. That would be the International Mandela Effect Conference that we're going to go into. I'm so excited that they're finally doing this. Not finally, it's been around for a while, but this is how serious it is, guys. In the conversation that you just had, we'll have a link to the full conversation with the folks at IMEC, of which you lead. You talked about people seeing more vibrant colors. Are we now able to see more within the visible spectrum? And if so, what is causing that? There's a story of rare double rainbows that were spotted in Charleston, West Virginia, right at the beginning of the year. And there have been quite a few of these anomalous rainbow-ish, and we know there are a lot of factors, meteorologically speaking, but more than normal,
Right.
different kinds of colors, a different confluence of colors. Rainbow is a spectrum. It's pretty tight to the science of what it is, but people are seeing other things now. What do you have to say about that?
Well, this is a huge topic, and when you get into the colors, as you might realize, you're right, our visible spectrum has slightly expanded according to the typical, Western science viewpoint. But what you and I are talking about now is a much bigger expansion that we're noticing. And with the Mandela Effect, we're noticing things existing that supposedly have been around for thousands, if not millions of years, such as rainbow mountains, such as rainbow trees,
Rainbow
all
animals
kinds
you
of
talked
rainbow
about.
animals, every kind, whether it's a squirrel, a rainbow squirrel from India, there we show that in our show, and rainbow birds that people don't remember having seen before. So it's not just one species of animal, it's just across the board. And it's everywhere you look. You've got trees, mountains, animals, you name it. So absolutely, there seems like there's a kind of a message coming through. And if you look at reality being driven by consciousness, and if this is the Great Awakening that has been foretold and foreseen by indigenous societies around the world and most of our great religions too, then obviously the two might be connected. And it does seem like that is the case, that we're opening our consciousness to recognizing that we are creators and to stepping into a bit more responsibility than perhaps we've ever known that we could or had access to in the past.
Exciting times, indeed.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a quote that you put. I'm going to pull your book right here. This never gets old for me. This is called Reality Shifts. Let me make sure that gets in the shot there. I love this book. You've since written several books, but this to me is the gold standard for where you really set the precedent for the work that you're doing. So I did a little stichomancy. I like stichomancy better, but stichomancy. Okay, we'll stick with that. But I did that with your book today. I like to do that every once in a while when I'm interviewing best-selling authors. And so here's a quote that I came up with when I opened the book. And you better believe I looked at the page number. It wasn't 55 because that would have been too woohoo. But nonetheless, I thought this was a poignant quote, and I'd like to have you elaborate, where you say, it helps to consider with a truly open mind the possibility that our minds create reality, learning through personal and shared experiences. I've found my perception of the fluidity of reality has greatly increased as I have become more aware of my surroundings without assuming that reality will meet my expectations and match my beliefs. I found my perception of the fluidity of reality has greatly increased as I have become more aware of my surroundings. I think that's what sage advice. I mean, you don't present it as advice, but it is become aware of patterns, become aware of your surroundings, and you will notice the malleability of reality.
Absolutely. We're in an ongoing conversation with reality because if everything is consciousness and we are it too, then of course we're in dialogue even when we don't think we are. So it's like we're always in that those reality shows. I'm trying to think of the Truman Show.
Oh, yes.
Remember that?
I
Yeah.
love that movie.
Because that really was showing that this gentleman is being watched and observed all his life, and he thinks it's a regular life, but the whole thing is some huge stage production where they put on this entire what if scenario, like it's all for him. And in some real sense, that's what each of us is doing with our own personal lives. There doesn't appear to be one objective reality with one
Mhm.
set of truth so much as lots of individual subjective realities. And that might seem scary at first, but that's good news because each of us has the power to really incorporate our highest level of knowledge and being and raise our own standards and meet and greet the world that way at our best and bring our best to it and then receive that in return.
It's interesting that you say that there may not be any one, I'll throw in master objective reality. I tend to be open to that idea. But, when we go back to this idea of Mandela effects, and Mandela effects get their sort of, their they're corroborated by the fact that so many people are having this, what others call false memory. That seems to be, there's an objective, that's objective in and of itself. The fact that there's a collective agreement, eh, which sounds a little paradoxical, yet that just came to mind.
Yes. Well,
Right?
when you look at that, then you recognize, okay, humans are social. We're very social creatures. We love to agree with one another. We look to each other like we want to know, how do people see me. That's a big thing most of us go through, at least earlier in life. And so that whole business of how do they see me? Do I fit in? Am I thinking the right things, wearing the right things, saying the right things? We care so much about that stuff. And of course, you're going to see it in the web of consciousness itself and also in reality. That's collective consciousness at work with tribal groupings of reality where people would. It's almost like we're voting with if you watch the IMEX show, Open Tables, that you're referring to, with
Hmm.
the golden timeline is the name of it. And what we're really talking about, in addition to the rainbow animals and so forth, is looking at our ability to choose a timeline and to get feedback on how we're doing based on looking at things like the Mona Lisa's smile. And that's Christopher Anatra, who keeps a picture of the Mona Lisa in his office every day so he can look at it. Like, are we on track? How are we doing? Oh,
And he
good.
sees
The
the
Mona
facial
Lisa,
features
she's,
change.
yeah, yeah. Because if you remember, as I do, the Mona Lisa used to not smile. It was the famous, it's like that
Stoic.
strange, yeah, it was kind of, they would talk about the expression, that it was so unique because it was a hint of a smile without a smile.
Hmm.
Now it's now they would never say that because it's so obviously a smile. And so that's an indicator of where we are. And that's when we're talking about the golden timeline in that episode that I'm referring to now. It's the idea that, just like I'm suggesting the page you turn to in reality shifts, we're absolutely choosing based on what you're paying attention to. And so if you're looking at how good it can get, if you're looking at what you're grateful for, what you're appreciating, the rainbow animals and the beauty in the world, rather than, it's very easy to look at what's wrong. I could do it, you could do it. We could even make the whole show about that today. But we're choosing not to do that. And
That's
we
right.
all we make that choice every day in our
Sure
personal
do.
lives, with our friends, with our family. We're choosing. And collectively, when we do that, we can raise consciousness together, and
Amen.
we can choose a different timeline. Yeah.
I love it. That's powerful. It's easier than you think, journeyers. And what just raced through my mind as you were saying that we choose because we are creatures habituated to routine. If routine inserts those things that are not for our highest good, choose differently. It's as simple as that. It is difficult to untether ourselves to, particularly now, I say turn off the you know what. I've had to say the same thing, and I'm not going to use the excuse I'm a journalist. I've got to watch the news. No, no, no. No, you don't. No, you don't, because I notice it is absolutely, I'm choosing to, and it's absolutely affecting my perception of reality and what's coming into my reality. When I choose otherwise, it changes. There's no
It's just
question about it.
it's no different than food. It's like when we make food choices, sometimes we choose junk, but that's our choice, and we need to be conscious of it.
Yeah,
So
right.
we
Choice.
need,
And the
yeah.
choice, I think, is even more powerful now more than ever. Let's go to this because we're gonna end. Always goes too quickly. By the way, we're going to the after show, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. We still got a few more minutes. We are going to go to the after show, however.
Yes.
Let's talk about. You said something on the Open Tables conference. I want to say conversation, where you talked about one of the Mandela effects that you. I don't know if this was recent or not. Where you know how when you're I think it's a passenger side of your car where the mirror says, what does it say? Objects in the
Objects.
mirror may be closer than they appear. I'm going to ask the audience what you ask your audience. I'm going to ask the same thing. Forgive me, don't call me that I'm plagiarizing. How
That's
many
good.
people recall looking in that mirror, that side mirror where it says objects in the mirror may, operative word may, appear closer than they appear? Objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. Raise hand if you do, right?
I
You
do.
too? Okay.
Yeah.
And so what have you discovered?
Well, that's one of the Mandela effects that, for me, was a shock, because now all of the car windows, including my car, every car that I would look at, it now does not say may appear close. Objects may be closer than they appear. It just says that they are. I mean, there's no maybe about it. It's just objects in mirror are closer than they appear. It used to leave this fascinating little range of, hey, they might be closer than they seem to be, but now it's like saying they are. And there was no change in the printing. I've got an old car. I didn't go and buy a new car. So at the time that I noticed this, I think forget when, it was a few years back, but I also remember having seen that this amazing expression played a huge role in a movie, Jurassic Park. If people saw that movie, there was a scene where it's kind of a joke, or it used to be. You'd be looking in the side view mirror that says objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. That was the terrifying part, the maybe. And now it's they are. So it's like, okay, you're seeing a dinosaur chasing you. You're trying to get away in this little car and through the jungle. And it used to be like amazing, like
I just
maybe
got a
closer.
visual.
Yeah. That's what I remember that. So I had to, I'm like, no, that couldn't have changed. That changed because that's what made that scene so hilarious and so terrifying. And so I went to find it, and now even in the movie, it's so it's not just one of, a lot of people will say, well, they changed things. That may the wording changed. When does that happen? When does a required warning message change? First of all, that doesn't happen. Okay, so and then in the movie, you'll now see, apparently it always was, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. That's not nearly as
Something's going on.
dramatic. Yeah. Yeah.
Something's going on, guys. I mean, at what point are we going to, this is my new thing, address the elephant in the room, address the Mandela effect in the room, address the reality in our space? At what point, I have to tell you, uh, for me, now I've heard a lot of very interesting things and Mandela effects experiences I've had myself, but the one I still can't get my arms around that I learned it all from you, where you talked about the Bible verse, the lion lays down with the lamb.
Yes.
I immediately went, I think that we talked about this before, so bear with us, journeyers, if you've heard me say this before, because it's amazing to me. I
It's
went
so, yeah.
upstairs to my mother's Bible that her father gave her when she was a teenager. My mother's been gone for 25 years. Dog-eared copy of the King James Bible, and I looked at the verse, and lo and behold, it was different. It was not what we recall. The wolf lays down with the lamb is what it said.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you how I tested this. Do you know I've
Okay.
gone to several individuals that are clergy, and I didn't even, it wasn't a leading question. I said, you know that quote in the Bible, I don't even remember what book it's in, but it's something about the something lays down with the lamb. I just did this actually a couple of months ago, and I'm not going to blow up the reverend spot. I'm not going to mention his name. It's a he, but I played with him. I said, what is that? I can't recall. He says, oh, the lion lays down with the lamb. Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Clergy, someone who knows the book like
Oh, yeah.
no one can. And so then I posed the scenario to him. He didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
So, Cynthia Sue Larson, something's going on here. That is not false memory. Excuse me, folks that want to just justify everything with the left brain. It ain't happening.
Right. No, it's not just, well, the reason that we need to shut the left brain down is to access the intuitive knowingness so that we can remind ourselves that we're connected to nature. Like we do have telepathy with our pets, with wild animals, with living things, with each other. We can actually tell sometimes when the phone's going to ring and who's going to be there. We've got these abilities thanks to quantum entanglement, thanks to love, the connections that are quite genuine. The Mandela Effect is showing us that mind matter interactions, they don't just happen with each of us individually, they can happen with what we consider out there facts and reality and history and things that aren't supposed to change. Those can change for large groups of people. And with a Mandela effect, sometimes people notice some of them. Some say that's not a change for me because it's a very subjective thing. That's another facet of the Mandela effect. So often when there's a big one for one person, it's not a big one for someone else. For me, the lion and the lamb, that was huge.
Huge.
There are lots of really big ones. Another one is like do you know the song by Queen, "We Are the Champions"?
Oh, do I know the song by Queen? I know every song by Queen. Yes.
Okay,
One of
yes,
my
of
favorites.
course, yes. So the "We Are the Champions." When the song ends, what's that last phrase that they always say?
No
We
time
are,
for losers because we are
uh-huh,
the champions.
we are the
Well,
champions.
there's two parts to that song. But anyway, give us
Well,
what's the
well,
song
I remember it ends of the world.
of the world, right?
Okay, now the song never ends that way. I think there's one version where they've tracked it down and they could find, like, they did it live that way once. But but on the albums, everything, never. It's just, it ends, "We are the champions." And it doesn't say "of the world" at the end. And so when you do a sing along, and they've had, you know, I think, trying to remember the late night host that does some of these sing-alongs, and he had a couple of celebrities in his car.
Karaoke,
Horton.
carpool
Yeah,
karaoke. Yeah.
carpool karaoke. So they were doing "We Are the Champions," and then they were singing "Of the World," and then, but it's not in the song. So they're looking at each other like, what happened?
Yeah.
Everybody remembers it that way, but it's not that way. So there's another classic.
I think that again, the approach that you're taking as to you're going with the assumption that there is something authentic going on here. And I will say, quoting Dana Zohar, a physicist who I respect greatly, who once said, people have experiences and science denies the experience because they don't have the instruments of the moment to measure it. We don't have the instruments at this time to measure what's going on, but that does not mean that something's not going on. That the measurement is really through these, it's even more than anecdote, it's measurement through numbers of people. And even the band itself at a couple of times you said the Queen played "Of the World" at the end. Now do you know that I still have the vinyl of that album? I still do, and I'm going to go check it out as soon as we hang up. And of course, it won't be there. It'll be "Of the World" will not be there. I've already done that check, so I know. I don't. At what point? How much more convincing do we need that there's something far more powerful going on? Let's end with this. I want to talk about these monoliths.
Okay.
Uh, Speaking of mirrors, we were talking about the mirror, and I
Yeah.
meant when I ran out for an errand, I wanted to check my side view mirror, but that's another thing. I've got homework to do. As soon as we hang up, I'm going outside. I'm checking that side mirror, and I'll call you, Cindy, if lo and behold it says objects do appear closer than they are, not may,
Right.
ever. Mirrors. A lot of these monoliths, or I call them not obelisks, but monoliths, are shiny. They have the reflective surface.
Yes.
You found something in there that could put it within the context of Mandela effects. There were about 6 appearances of these monoliths, and mysterious appearance and disappearance, from Utah to Russia, I believe, to
Yeah.
Quincy, Massachusetts, in my hometown. As a matter of fact, I'll put up an image right now and show you. I don't know if you've seen this, Cynthia, but take a look at this. Let me put this up, and I want to make sure I'm out of the way, or we're out of the way. Let me see if I can show y'all. Let me see if I can. Whoop.
There it is. Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's a lot more than 6. In fact, there were 8 silver ones, and then a 9th one came in that was not silver. So there's been a whole bunch of these. The first one that you mentioned was first noticed in November 2020, but they studied some of the Google Earth maps and found out it had been actually placed there many years early, previous, that just never noticed. I guess it first arrived 2015, 2016, but we didn't really notice it until November 18th, 2020. And subsequent to that, a bunch more have shown up. Now, I'm not saying that they're all Mandela effects. I'm not saying they came out of literally nowhere. It's possible. We're in a lockdown globally. There are probably metal workers who feel like, I want to join in this. I want to put one up, of
Yeah,
course. So
could be.
yeah, we're not saying that that's not happening. Maybe it is. Maybe they're just not admitting to it. That's fine. And they're being reacted to very differently in different parts of the world. We've got armed guards protecting them in Turkey, when one showed up near the big underground pyramid area. That's the natural preserve area. So there's an armed guard protecting them from being basically attacked by people, because that
Hmm.
has happened. Yeah, there was one was burned and trashed and just trampled and destroyed. So people react to them very differently. Sometimes, when, like that first one in Utah showed up, the park rangers and the Forest Service was saying, "Do not come here. This is it's a wildlife preserve, so we don't want the traffic. We don't want people trampling the ground." But then it just vanished. So someone, I guess, came and took it away, or it just vanished.
Or
So
just vanished, which is the other thing. Yeah. Look, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
okay. So what's interesting, and the connection with the 9th one that I hinted at, that one is gold. So that's the Colombian monolith that showed up, not silver like the one you showed, but gold. And so the fact that it showed up in the color gold, is interesting. So is the fact that it was the ninth monolith. So is the fact that it showed up in the area of Colombia that basically indicates it stands for the word moon, which corresponds city of the moon. So it's in the town or the area called Chia, which is pronounced shy. And I'm the person who researched this beautifully in a video is Christopher Anatra, the quantum businessman on YouTube. So he's one of
Mhm.
our IMEC members, and he did a special on this. But that's fascinating because when you look at the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, where
Mhm.
the monolith plays such a part in doing what? In raising consciousness and helping what?
Mhm.
Evolution. So, we're back to these ideas of consciousness, of evolution. We got the idea of the moon, and some people are looking at this gold monolith as being the master monolith. Well, it does show up as the ninth one, so that would
And this is the
indicate
only one that showed up gold?
so far, right?
I hope we can get an image of that. If so, I'll put that up. I don't have one, but
Well,
um,
I've got yeah, I've got a couple of
if you can
uh,
send it to me in production, I can put it up so folks can see it. That would be
yeah.
great. Yeah, it's
This is the
fascinating.
here it is. Trying to can you see it?
I can, but yeah, send it to me so we can maybe get a larger look at it. That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, folks, something's going on. And I, for those of us that are inquisitive, and I am an advocate of of exploring the mystery, as I often say, something's doing its own thing, whether we understand it or will ever understand it or not. And I think it will go back to the cliche, trust the process. Uh,
Yes.
does it matter whether we ultimately get to the bottom of the mystery? Ultimately, just like there may not be any objective reality, there may not be any need of having a definitive answer as to how it's working, why it's working. Just know that it's working and that we are inextricably linked to what it is, this phenomena. Maybe we're creating it ourselves, journeyers. So with that, we're gonna close this down, but we're gonna, as I said, take it on over to the Patreon after show. Let me put up the little banner
And
so y'all know where to come. We're gonna talk.
I've got a fun exercise for the after show. I'm going to ask
Oh,
people. Yeah, I've got a really fun one that we can try together. So
okay, that sounds like a plan. So we're gonna do that. Anything else you want to say? We know where to find Cynthia. We can find Cynthia just about anywhere these days. You can just Google her and she'll come up like that. Realityshifters.com.
yes.
Tell us very briefly about the International Mandela Effect Conference. You are the
President, yes, on
That's
the
right.
it's now a 501 it's a 501c3
Right.
nonprofit organization. Eventually we'll get back to doing conferences again.
Yes.
Obviously we're on a bit of a hiatus here, but in the meantime we've started up IMEC open tables, and it's fabulous. As you saw, the first series 1 episode 1, the golden timeline, and it's an opportunity for us to highlight some of the Mandanimals of the week or the month, what have you, the ones that we featured, which are like that rainbow squirrel, the giant rainbow squirrel from
There's some
India.
great images. I'm going to see if I can grab a couple and put them up on the show so we can see here. But I want people to go over, watch Open Table, support IMAC. And
Yes,
I heard you say, Cynthia, that there's literally now a Mandela Effect community that's emerging. This is a big deal. So,
it's a huge deal. It's going to keep growing. This is not going away anytime soon.
no.
And we've got a mailing list through imec.world. We've got our YouTube channel, International Mandela Effect Conference. And if you sign up on the newsletter, then we'll keep you posted when each of our new episodes comes live. And you can also subscribe on the YouTube channel
Okay.
too, of
We're going to have
course.
more
Yeah.
information about IMAC on higherjourneys.com, y'all. So be sure to check in. And you do know Cynthia is one of our senior contributors. We got to tap you for a new article, Cindy, to put on Higher Journeys. I know you've got so much going on, but everything that you write and that you explore, it's always a treat. So that's great. Speaking of, I love the segue from one thing to another. Speaking of articles on higherjourneys.com and speaking of, uh, this shift, as in reality shifts, we have a wonderful contributor named Stephanie Gray, who recently joined the team over at Higher Journeys as a contributor. And she just published a great article having to do with the great shift and how to cope with it and resources that you can find to be able to cope is, I don't know if I want to use the word cope, but to integrate. I do feel that we are going through a shift of gargantuan proportions, and it's been written in the books of history that this time would arrive. And lo and behold, I believe it has. So go on over to higherjourneys.com. We will have a link to that article as well. Go check that out and check out some of the resources that Stephanie lists in the blog post. So there you are. I think we got it
Uh,
all done. Yeah. So, all right, Cynthia Sue Larson, always a pleasure. I love you so dearly.
how
20
good can it get?
years.
Yeah. Let's
How
just keep
good can
finding
it get?
out.
Yep. This is the truth because it's going to get real good. I know it is, even in the face of all the madness. You know what I say?
Yes.
It's about the magic, and it's there for sure. So, with that, we say thank you, and we hope to see you over on Patreon. Going over there
Yeah.
right now. I see somebody open the door, so we're gonna shuffle on over there right now. So
Okay.
we'll talk to you soon,
Bye.
Juniors. Love you. Take care.
Yeah. Love you.